Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
one thing I suggest is keep the full screen so that we don't have anything else in recording.
Yeah, as much as yeah. I'm trying to. Well, I'm switching between different screens, so I'm just trying to share the desktop, but I'm gonna try to not to switch to any other screens while recording is happening. All right, let's go ahead and start with a just a quick review of the agenda. So last week we did a great job going through features, and I wanted to give you a quick update. Oops, a little spelling error. I'll fix that. Um, on the overall setup of the project, I've made quite a few adjustments to the project setup based on some of the takeaways and based on some of the learning on the work that Evan did in some of the other projects. And I wanted to point out a few things that I identified just as the intricacies of managing the projects within the GitHub. And especially probably a better thing to do is to start using more labels for, and I'll explain one in a second. Then, so we'll spend a little bit of time going through that. But the goal is to jump into our this week's iteration and to jump into start discussing standards and start prioritizing, assigning ownership, and defining action items. Hopefully in the same format and exercise that we did um, um, uh, last technical console within the context of features, but there might be a few adjustments that we wanted to have. And then the SLA management discussion is transitioned from last agenda because we didn't get a chance last week to talk about that. So I'm hoping that we can have that as a discussion point this week. Anything else on the agenda that wasn't covered that you would like to cover today that I can take a note on?
No, I would just want to say that I think that yeah, the way the structure has been created so far is really cool. And I'm really excited to yeah get started hacking on some of these standards and yeah.
Amazing. So let's take a look at the structure, as you mentioned. So one of the things that became quite apparent is that using some of the drop-down fields has in the project may be uh, um, in some cases undesirable because these attributes do not carry over to the issue. So if you have a particular attribute, if I create, for example, standards categories as a defined field, once it's converted to as a defined field in the project plan, once it converts to an issue, it stays in the project plan, but when you look at it from the issue standpoint, you don't see it. The only things that gets carried over to the issue is this first description field becomes the initial comment that gets saved, which is great. But beyond that, only milestones and labels gets carried over. So I think from that perspective, it's probably if we want any kind of attributes to be retained at the issue level, those needs to be defined into milestones and standards. So that's exactly what I did with labels. So if I open this field that was already been this story that's been converted to an issue already, you can see it now that it falls under the labels field, but like the status to do only within the context of project or any other fields um, only displayed in here. So anyway, so that as you can see here, labels been defined this way, and the layout of the labels. Let me just show you real quick, and you can get the labels by clicking on issues, and then you can see the labels or milestones here. So I organized them in the following way. So to have a visual, because there is no category of labels, I try to use the naming convention to group things together. As you can see here, it's you have a major and minor for ability to sort within the group. And I also use the same color scheme for the entire group. So you can see the story types here as yellow, and they start with 1 point, and then the rest of them is for sorting criteria. Then the products use this color scheme and starting with 2.1 and so on and so forth. And then qualities was identified this way, and then standards were identified this way. So that's just a quick overview how the labels got organized. And then of course, when you go back to either issues, um, you can clearly see them very easily as to what they are, and that provides a better visibility. And of course, you can see the same thing if you go back to projects. You can pull up the column called labels, and you can sort by this, or you can filter by that in any way, shape, or form. Okay. Any questions, concerns, any feedback on the way that the stories got organized based on this categories?
Yeah, I really like being able to assign multiple things to a single issue. Yeah, so that we could filter off of queries, or sorry, so that we could filter off of qualities, or filter off of products or standard areas. Yeah, I think that that's a really clever way to do it.
Excellent. So the board's now organized. You have a collective roadmap, but then I created a couple of tabs just to separate standards from features, and then operations another tab. So last time we
Yeah.
spoke, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask if anybody else has any other feedback.
I don't have other feedback, but when we get to it, I have a question about like when we're filling out the action items and issues.
Excellent. Actually, I was going to go into that next. So for features, we actually, as part of our previous work session, we identified the owners. I think there's a couple ones that don't have the owners, and I was hoping that we can fill it out today. But for each of them, I created an issue. So let's take a look at the first one as an example. And the initial comment is where I've added um, um, the template to enter the the description, as well as start defining the action items, which was the primary takeaway from the last meeting. And of course, this is a public. I think everyone should be able to have authority to go in and edit this. And I think this is where we can start adding the descriptions in this initial comment, which is kind of the overall description of the story. Would that is that an acceptable, or you think an appropriate approach? Um, that's the question that I wanted to ask. Do we have a couple of other options? One would be to organize everything in a single uh, um, uh, uh, single file that can be then posted into the repo separately. The benefit of that is that it could be, I think, easier maintained through a HackMD. So for example, if you look at the repo, I created the docs folder, and the file that we were working on collectively last work session, I posted it in here. So that's available, and we can continue working through this by synchronizing to a HackMD story and continue updating that, and that's another approach. Um, the the problem with that approach, well, there's no problem, but um, now it's somewhere else, right? If you keep keeping it at the story level, may have a value to it. So it's entirely up to you. It's a question to the group as what would be the preferred method for keeping all this content. I think my preference would be to continue doing it at the story level, directly in the issue. I think that will require less, kind of post processing. But That might be a valid
Yeah,
approach.
I wanted to vote for tracking it in the issue as well, just for the description, and then for the actual implementation, we could, use that docs folder or something like that.
Right, and then for the actual, you mean for the actual technical documentation surrounding that? I think that might be going to the in a different repo altogether. That's another thing, right? Because we also have standards.
Right. Yep. Yep. Makes sense.
So I'll help organizing that once we start collecting the data, the larger articles, if you will. But just in terms of keeping the action items, I think that doing it at the story level, let me just go back to that real quick. Let's just go back to features as an example. Because of course, all of these action items, as we define them, if they're more complex and sophisticated than just a select priority, we can convert them to issues as well and then track them at that level. And that becomes an easier method to track at the, subtasks, if you will.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think this all looks good, from my opinion.
So I think I did not see who asked the question, but can you, did that answer your question? I think Namaste, was that with you who's asking it? I apologize.
No, I don't think so.
It was me who had the question. And my question was actually about like the on here, like the specification and general brainstorming and feedback. Because you had asked us to fill these out before the meeting today, I think, and I wasn't sure exactly what to put for specification, and if general and brainstorming feedback, if that was something that like I should fill out with brainstorming, or if that's like group brainstorming.
No, I think great question. I apologize. I probably should have been more clear. The intent was to not to actually fulfill any action items, but just to list out what should be then done, create sort of a quick set of the tasks, and update this section to add more tasks, or modify the ones that that may or may not make sense. If it's specification and general brainstorming feedback, that's great. But if there is already a more explicit list of activities associated with that particular story, that was the intent, is to create that list in addition to description.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And that's not due this week because we're on a 2-week cycle, right? Where this week we're focusing on standards, and whatever actions are going to be action items that we're going to derive out of that are due not next week, but the following week, because we're kind of have parallel sprints between features and standards. And each sprint is 2 weeks. So it's on and off weeks, right?
Very cool. Thanks.
All right, I think that covers, I'm sorry, any more questions about the process before we jump into standards discussion? Doing a quick time check, 11:15 Central Time. So that means that we have a half an hour allocated. Next half an hour is allocated to going over the outline standards that we created the week earlier, not the last week, but the week before that. And the goal at this point is to go through a similar exercise, but hopefully within the context of each issue, to go through and start creating a prioritization, the ownership, start defining the ownership, and potentially get in. And the other question that I wanted to ask is, should we go ahead and define a similar template for each one that we can fill out after the, as a takeaway for out of this meeting for the to be due in 2 weeks. So I would think that create a template similar to what we did, maybe a description and action items, or maybe for the standards, the template should be slightly different, and that would be the discussion point here. Does that sound like a right exercise for us to go through? You guys agree with that?
Yeah, and I think that instead of doing broad strokes, we could try to pick maybe a good one to just start with. and really drill into one specifically and see how far we can take it. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
I think I prefer that way. Yeah.
Which one would you like to pick?
Same.
Here's our list.
Yeah, so I think that maybe one that might be easy to start with is the URI standard. Since we already have some documentation on that, and I think that it's pretty small as far as scope is concerned. And yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts on what we could start with?
I think the URI standard is a good start. Do we have any procedure for handling, additions to the standard? Like, for example, here we're not gonna be able to, I don't think, define the registry URI standard.
Right. Yeah. So we can define kind of the scope of this initial specification, and then that can be added in the future. So yeah. So here, I guess that the description would be specify how URIs work in the wrap standard. Um, in the wrap standard, and we also are already have documentation on this in the docs, and so we can link to that here. Um, Actually, if you just open up the docs really quick, it's just docs.polywrap.io. Um, docs.polywrap.io. And then if you click get started, or yeah, if you click any of those, on the left hand side, if you go to understanding URIs, yeah. So here's the current documentation we have, and we'll certainly want to expand upon this. But yeah, we can just post a link to this in the description, I think. Okay. And then I guess that the next part after just a simple description would probably be adding kind of I guess like an initial dissection of what this would look like in parts. So I guess that maybe after description, yeah,
Maybe like define a table of content or sections.
yes, yeah. So description and then proposed sections. I guess you could say.
Well, just let's call it sections. Obviously, everything here is proposed and is in work in progress.
Yep. Okay.
So everything is
So
proposed
section.
here.
And so then yeah, like the first section would be um uh would be the URI format. So the kind of like the different URI formatting parts. The next would be URI authorities, um, URI paths, um,
Paths?
and then
Is that right?
yeah, and then after that we have like the actual URI resolution process, but that is like a link to a whole nother specification. And so yeah, for URI resolution, maybe we put just in parentheses, you know, um, link to another section or something like that. Like, you know,
Is that going to be another standard URI resolution?
yeah, I believe we already have one issue for that, so we could link to that issue here.
I'll have to find it. Let me just see it.
Yep.
Is that it?
Yes. Yeah.
28.
Cool. And then yeah, can anyone else think of some sections to add here?
Maybe discussion about the protocol, like are we gonna call it wrap or polywrap?
Yeah, that's a good point. So above URI authorities, we can have basically URI protocol, um, which I can't remember if it's called protocol in the actual like URI specification. Um, and so I guess that um, one of the other bullet points I think above URI format is we can add a bullet point that says existing URI specification, which this is something that has been published for a very long time on the web, and we can link to that, and then we can just basically say that everything that we are doing complies with this specification, um, including like our own URI protocol. And yeah, we can call that wrap. Currently, it's called W3 colon slash slash, but we can call it wrap colon slash slash. I think that makes the most sense. Yeah, and could you put that wrap colon slash slash on the third bullet point, because that is the wrap protocol. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Um, yeah, does that look good?
I like it.
Yeah, same.
Awesome.
Yeah, it does look good.
All right, so this feels like a really big win, because now we have a general overview, and one of us could go through and basically write this out, and we could have some review sessions to go over it. Yeah, does that all sound like good next steps?
So somebody will need to take ownership for initial draft, right? Is that that I'm hearing this right?
Yeah, yep.
And then we can define a workflow for review process, right? I'll take that as a separate note, so we'll probably just need to have a workflow where we initial draft is being produced, then we go through a review process, um, and then go through iterations until it's been finalized and been accepted, and then they can be posted. So we need to have. So let me ask you a question. This is already going to be a separate document that we want to create. So I think this is again just kind of a high level, right? But then we can create a link to actual document in a standards project, right? Repo.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Yep.
I'll have to find it. I don't remember exactly what. I think it was something like that.
Yeah, it's currently called specification, but we can
Specification.
rename it to be standards. Yeah.
Specification. Yeah, there you go. I'll create an organization structure, and then what is the EDI for developing there's going to be HackMD. So just create a separate document and then allow folks to connect to that, right? For all intents and purposes. Is that how we're thinking about it? Or it doesn't really matter. It's up to everybody to decide how to actually produce those.
Yeah, so like I kind of like um hmm, I think that we could reference how the Ethereum improvement proposals work. They have like a repository where there's each proposal has its own document, its own markdown document, and at the top of it it has a status. And so for us, we could have an initial status of draft. And then when we end up discussing the actual, standard proposal, we can, potentially link to a recording of the discussion. And if it gets approved, we can change the status to approved. And so basically, like, our end product would be a collection of documents, each with the standard inside of them. And, each standard would have a status with kind of proof of acceptance, I guess you could say. So that if somebody wanted to kind of like go through and see kind of the knowledge base around like this specific standard, they could easily do that. Yeah.
I think it makes sense to mimic the EIP process. Maybe even the whole status terms, and the whole process. Yeah.
Okay, I'll work on creating the structure for that. I'm taking that as a task for myself. I should convert this to issue.
Awesome. And yeah, just for, creating the draft and hacking around, I think people can feel free to do that wherever they feel most comfortable. And yeah, we'll, figure out the structuring for like the final form. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great. I'll work on that, and then I'll create the structure in the standards repo. We can make a decision if we want to, excuse me, specification repo. We can make a decision if we want to remain with the standard at some point. That's probably not critical at this time. And link them all to appropriate stories. So each of the stories will have in the description a link to the document. So maybe right in the description we'll have something like that, right? I don't know if that's the term you want to use, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and then based on prioritizations that we've set up. So if we want to go ahead right now and go back to the project here real quick. Do we want to go ahead and assign the owners for the drafts that we want to set up for over the next 2 weeks? And pick the ones that we want to focus on, or set up groups around them?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how people want to do this. I think that having kind of enthusiastic contributors take on the various standards would be great. Because I think that we certainly know best of what this should look like. And yeah, and it doesn't just have to be one person as well. And so that's kind of where like those like task forces that you described come into play. So maybe the best next step is for the URI standard, since we've all kind of agreed on a general outline. We can now create a task force for it, and people can raise their hand and say, hey, like, I want to be a part of this. Uh, and the task force would be responsible for creating like the initial draft.
All right. Who would like to participate in the URI standards discussions?
Yeah, I'll raise my hand and add my name to the list and help coordinate with others to get this draft created.
Same.
Sorry, I couldn't. Who was that?
Yuri or Yuri.
Yeah, the name is Nerf Zale.
I
Yeah, there
already
you go.
figured that out. It took me a while. Last week I was trying to figure that out, but I already know your is starts with a nerf. Nerf Zile or Nerf Zeal? How do you
Zale, yeah.
Zale? Nerf Zale.
It's
Gotcha.
a meme. Yeah, Nerf Zale.
Anybody else? Okay. The next question I would like to ask is just in terms of the working flow for you guys. What works best? Do you prefer working on this sort of in off-life mode individually, or would you prefer that we start coordinating like a work sessions similar to the docs work sessions, where we can, schedule a separate call, get like an hour work session a week organized around this, where it's not an offline mode, but sort of peer, peer programming type of a deal.
In my opinion, I think that would work well. I think that each task force will probably have their own way of doing it. And so, after this meeting, I think that I'll probably add you know, probably every other day, maybe, just a 30-minute call really quickly, to make some progress on this. Um, and yeah, so, and everyone will be able to see that on the calendar. Um, yeah, it'll just be like the, task force, URI specification, and then anyone is free to join if they want. And I think that we can use these meetings where everyone is here, to do the review process. Since having everyone here for the actual like drafting might be a little too inefficient.
One thing I'd like to see when drafting these standards, or the drafts at least for the standard, is the references. So, where are you getting your opinion from? Links to other sites, other articles, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And so yeah, like the nice part about this is that um, I think that this is a good one to start with because it builds on existing standards. And so we can kind of use best practices in this small one, to show how we should do it in future ones. Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Excellent.
Okay. Does anyone else feel enthusiastic about another standard that was on the board? Because if we could parallelize, one or two of these, that might be ideal.
I feel enthusiastic about the multi-client support, but maybe there are like other smaller things that we could tackle first as early victories, probably, because the multi-client thing seems to be like a big, long discussion, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think that we should have much pressure, to be able to flesh all these out right now, because you're right. There's a ton of complexity and a ton of dependencies. Um, but I would encourage you, like, if you are feeling enthusiastic about it, like, use that to create some initial draft, because that gets us farther than where we are right now. So I think that, yeah, even if it's a big one, we could start tackling it now if you have some ideas.
Cool. I created a like a very small draft that looks more like scratchpad with my thoughts, more than more than a standard draft. Maybe we could discuss that. Another topic that I feel particularly enthusiastic, and I think it's pretty urgent, is the error error tracing, the better error tracing, which Niraj, I know that has worked on.
I'm just not seeing those here in the list.
It's just tracing, not error tracing. 28.
Tracing, correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So which one might you want to start with?
I think the tracing one probably. And I recall there was a HackMD document with like the current status.
Yeah. Are you talking about the HackMD, like the oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about the README in the tracing project. But you're talking about a separate HackMD somewhere.
Yeah, actually, I think it's this one. I'm gonna send it through the boys chat text. It's called Improve Error Tracebacks. I think it's a different issue altogether. In voice chat text. Yep, that one. Yeah.
So I think that fell on the features.
Ah, okay, got it. So it's not one of the criticals.
Well,
Okay,
So
then.
so I feel like this is a good example of something that we want to improve upon as a feature, but we also want to create a standard around, right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay. So this is a cool example of something where you could work on what, the feature might look like, and then that would inform what the standard would look like. Yeah.
Mm. So then the multi-client thing is indeed a 1.1 standard. Maybe we could talk about that instead. Yeah, it's called multi. I'm just gonna copy it over voice chat text again.
You can see the issue number.
It's issue number 2. Yep, I put like down at the bottom. There's like a link.
This is also features.
Oh, it's also a feature. Then never mind.
Well, no. So like
We can
I,
change
I
that.
think that with both of these, like both of these are areas in the project, like in the product that we want to improve upon. Like as a feature. But there's also corresponding standards that come from it. And so yeah, like I think that both of these are great examples. And they could be worked on week over week at that. You know.
Yeah, agreed. Do we have listed the client standard itself?
I believe so.
Like what constitutes like an MVP for a client, or what are like the core features that a client must have to be considered a client and so?
No, I think that would be the thing that would be the standard that comes with this.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So the feature would be multiple clients, and the standard might be Polywrap client standard or wrap client standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So should we go ahead and add the wrap client standard here?
Yeah, sure.
This is a standard. Any dependencies here? Is it considered dependency for anything?
Can you describe more of what that means? Is it a dependency on another standard or a dependency on a feature or?
So last time we discussed standards, we identified that we want to create. That was one of the takeaways from the previous meetings. Um, give me a second.
I mean, I imagine that there are some features that depend upon a specific standard. I imagine.
So we wanted to say, we had I had a note and takeaway from the previous meeting is that we wanted to in order to prioritize properly, we wanted to identify the one that has the most dependencies.
Got it.
So
Could
maybe
we
that was a
take a
bit.
look? Right, yeah,
Maybe that's not important.
so could we take a look at the list again?
Yeah, I feel like the dependencies fall out of the product categories that it affects. Um, if it affects, a bunch of product categories, then we know that this is a very important standard because it affects everything.
Hmm.
So let's call it a standard, right? Rep client standard. We'll come back to this. What category does it belong to? Um,
Client standard, probably.
Does it belong to the client itself, or just the client standard?
Yeah, that's a good question. Do we tag this with products? Like, should we add client as a tag?
we can. That's why I created this, so we can add them to. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to add from this list? And so that's 2 point. Here's our list.
Oh, I would add the quality multi-platform.
That's another thing that you can do very nicely with this. You can, if you have this naming convention, you can do 3.0, and that gives us the full list.
Super nice. Yeah, that's really handy.
So unfortunately, not in, in the it's not sorted by name, as you can see here for some reason, but that's
Yeah, and a quick question. I see that there's more qualities added here than are listed on like the landing page. Like there's those 6 qualities from the landing page. And so I was wondering like what was the purpose behind adding the extra ones like table driven or interoperable, I think is a new one as well.
Yeah, so that was listed um, on some of the, and we can, let me just go back to that document real quick. So it was listed, where's the repo? Here it is. Um, I picked them out of here. The additional ones.
Okay, got it.
So if you want to reorganize this, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, okay, got it. So this is actually a quick question I would like to have for the group. I was talking with Yuri about this recently, and we yeah, so those qualities right there. We were kind of talking about the importance of those qualities just as, Polywrap as a whole, because those are the things that we're trying to, basically do better for developers. Um, and so I was wondering like do you all think that we should only use these 6 qualities and we like really hone in on just these 6 and we try to see if things fall into these categories just so that way we have we have some cohesive understanding of what our core benefits are. Yeah.
Personally, I think you should have an explicit meeting about these qualities, see if they are all still applicable, should we add or remove any of them, and even flesh them out into multiple points. What does it mean to be secure? Like, what do we mean by that? Maybe product wise, maybe like just in general. And yeah, tackle this maybe as part of a technical council meeting or something, or another whole separate thing.
Yeah, it sounds like this is the sort of thing that should be its own kind of its own kind of standard study where it's like polywrap qualities or something like that, and we can create an outline of what the existing qualities are and what we propose that they should be.
It's easy to, I guess, ignore this or like gloss over it, but I just wanted to emphasize the Polywrap qualities are like the number one most important thing that we are doing here, and we should know we should all know what they are, why they are there in the first place. That's what makes us different or better than any other similar project. That's why users
Yeah.
are going to use us.
Yeah, I was going to say at the same time, this is very much like a product direction where like feedback from users should also inform and influence. Like, I think we can start with a list of qualities we think are desirable, but um, update or modify or refine those over time based on feedback that we get and the directions we want to choose. So I don't know if I would say so much that it's a standard that we need to define here. I think it's more product or market driven.
Yeah, that's a good point. So where should it live, I guess? Should we kind of just add this to the docs and talk about it and collaborate on it there? Or?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I think it's and I think of it in a similar vein to, in a way, I think it's sort of similar to like the conversation we had yesterday about, um, polywrap values, right? Where we have a starting point, like a notion today of what we think those are, but we should allow ourselves to again refine those or update them over time. I don't know what the best form. I don't think technical counsel is necessarily the best form for that because it feels like once they've been defined, then technical counsel can identify work that is associated with each of them. But I think it feels like the definition of those should be outside of this group. But I don't know immediately like what a better form should be.
I agree.
Yeah,
I don't think. Sorry.
no, you go ahead. Sorry.
I also don't think they're part of the technical council, and neither are they a standard. They're something that can and will evolve as time goes on. So yeah, docs are the minimum place where we should put them, but yeah, we should collaborate on them. And as part of like a working session, we should list as many as possible, and especially take feedback from the users, like why are they using us, what they like, what they want, and then trim down the list and see what's what we want to focus on.
All right. So
Okay.
let me jump back a little bit. So I think on the operations, I'll take a note for myself to Evan. I can coordinate with you to organize the process to determine what's the right way of establishing the qualities, right? Um,
Yeah, again, I think it's going to be more of like a product or marketing exercise. But yeah, we can chat about it offline. Sure.
Are you comfortable with participating, or do you want me to work with somebody? I'm just not sure who I should work with on this to define this.
Oh, I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that it. I mean, yeah, I don't have a I don't have a good suggestion for how or where it should be found. I don't think it's a technical council responsibility, but it's a something that will influence the direction of the technical council. So let's just what makes sense here. Let's maybe add it to the agenda for the next operations review meeting. Maybe that makes sense there to talk
Yeah,
about there.
I think it's definitely a product thing, and marketing comes from it. So
Yeah.
yeah, all apps are a good starting place, and the people who should like have, I guess, the most information here to share would be the ones that are dealing with the clients the most, like Roberto or Kevin or Jordan.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll put it on the next. You can just you can assign that to me if you want or whatever. I'll just put it on the next ops review meeting agenda.
Okay, I'll create all this after. I don't want to take any meetings console time for this, but I'll generate the issue and I'll and link it to yours. All right. Let's let me just clean up. We're actually running out of time here, so let me just ask a couple of questions real quick. So for tracing,
I think tracing is a fine one to start.
this one is, yeah, we already have the, just way too many windows open. That's why. Give me 1 second. So going back to standards, I think one of them did not get updated right. So wrap client standard, I'm sorry, it did not get updated. Can you give me a quick, what was the
Yeah,
category
it was
again?
client and sorry, it was client standard and client, the tags that it had,
Client standard.
and client under the blue ones, the 2.2, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 3 or something.
Okay, well, it looks like it's updated now. I'm not sure what happened the first time. Let me just refresh.
And the one that you created a task force for was for the URI one.
Yep, I did.
If you want
So,
to, okay.
yeah, so that's fine. I just wanted to make sure this one gets assigned, right? I'm sorry, who's talking right now? Yeah, I'm still learning everyone's voices because I don't see the screen.
Nestor.
Nestor, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. AKA Nemesti. Yeah.
Okay, so we're starting with the wrap client standard and with the URI standard. I'm going to create the pages for both of those, and also for the issue, I'll create the template here for you, Nestor, to fill in. And we can start with those two. Is that's the plan?
Sure.
Everyone's okay with it?
And yeah, and I don't know, like, where did the dependency conversation end up, but the multi-clients feature um is kind of a dependency on this one, because like, part of this is defining like what constitutes a client, like, and what are the minimal features to be considered like a full client. And um so so yeah, I don't know if we should if
Multi-client
Yeah,
feature.
Nestor, when you look at this, I think that you can just go to that feature issue and do the proper configuration. Yeah.
okay, cool.
All right, given a
Okay,
couple of
sweet.
minutes, go ahead.
No, yeah, I just want to say that it seems like we have, two, things starting, which is really exciting. And yeah, we can work on this coming week. Sweet.
Okay, just really quick, going back to the agenda for today. We're only have a couple of minutes left, but my question is, do we want to talk about SLA management discussion, at least to identify some tasks related to that as the last meeting agenda item? Or should we choose it,
Yeah,
pick it up next?
if if you pull up the SLA issue, sorry, I would on my end, but I'm on my phone right now. If you pull up like that SLA issue that we were talking about in the mono repo, um, yeah, if you just go to mono repo and then just type in SLA, um, I can talk through it in just like 2 minutes here, just to get some initial feedback. So if you go to issues, and then just type in SLA. Yep, it's that one. So,
Sorry, this first one?
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah, basically what I want to do is I want to just talk about what this is, and I want to get some initial feedback. So what an SLA is it's a service lifetime agreement. It's an agreement that a organization makes about a service and how it will be available and how long it will be available. And so for Polywrap, we wanted to create a SLA for wrapper persistence and deployment. And if you scroll up a little bit, there's the title up there, which may be a little more descriptive. So we want to allow our users to freely deploy and persist their wrappers. And so what does this service agreement actually look like? And so if you scroll down a little bit, the service is defined as, wrapper persistence. Wrappers will remain um, uh, wrappers will remain online and available for clients to download. The persistence node running at ipfs.wrappers.io will be treated as the primary provider of this service. It talks about the lifetime, so it's going to begin when alpha is released, and there is an undefined end. And it says here that the Polywrap DAO reserves the right to make any changes to this agreement with 90-day notice. So we can define an end date for this free hosting in the future. And then down at the bottom, there are some more details on the agreement. Here it talks about if you set an ENS domain record, then the IPFS hash will be persisted on the node. So it's formed in two ways: what the wrapper does, and what the wrapper developer does, and what the Polywrap DAO. And just to finish up here, we have a section for deployment, basically saying that the Polywrap DAO will keep all deployments that are not on ENS available for 24 hours. And then lastly, seeding. So, wrappers.io will seed out to the public IPFS network. So this is something that I imagine the DAO will vote on in the near future to basically establish this agreement. I was wondering if this makes sense to you all, and if you have any initial questions. I know that we're at time, so we can talk about this again, but I'm just wondering if anyone has any feedback or thoughts.
What about support? Is that usually included in the service level or SLAs agreements, such as response time for the support, severity issues? I've seen. Obviously, that may not be pertinent here, but that's been my experience as well.
No, I think that that's an awesome piece of feedback. This is truthfully the first SLA I've ever tried to write out. So yeah, if you could add a comment to the issue, with just those recommended additions, that would be super helpful, and we can add those.
Let me take a look at some of the SLAs that I've seen in the past from my library, and I'll be able to maybe suggest other areas that we might want to at least think about and see if that needs to be added. Okay, let me take a note on that.
Hey,
Awesome, thank you.
In section B, and where it says in exchange, Polywrap DAO agrees to, it says make the wrapper located at the IPFS hash available for free for 24 hours through ipfs.wrappers.io. So this is basically this is like a free trial of the persistence node, something like that?
Right. So deployment and persistence are two different things. Basically, deployment makes no guarantees about long-term persistence. And so you need to be able to deploy to IPFS initially, so that you can actually add that IPFS hash to ENS, so that then the persistence node can pick up that ENS record update and persist it forever. So that's what it's saying is in phase one, it will keep it online for 24 hours so that you can update the record and then keep it online forever. Yep.
My only concern here is with spamming. It's hard to spam on mainnet for free persistence because of the transaction costs, but for deployment, for just IPFS deployment, it's easy to spam that. You need some kind of protection for that.
Yeah, I think that we can come up with some boundaries around that. Maybe we have a size allotment of here's the maximum amount, or maybe we require some sort of authentication or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can talk about it, but not right now.
All right, so this was definitely great feedback. I really appreciate it. But it does look like we're over time. So yeah.
I'll continue adding this to discussion points, and we'll continue this review. Wanted to thank everybody for joining our regular technical council meeting. Once again, thank you so much for everyone's participation. As always, I'll post the recording before the end of next week with the notes, and we'll pick up on features next week. Next week, I'm going to be out at the blockchain conference in Paris, and I've asked Joe to facilitate this meeting in my absence. So looking forward to listening to recording when I'm come back.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eugene.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Eugene.